This episode is brought to you by Denver Film. 3 years after Christopher Nolan delivered his massive hit, Oppenheimer, he's back with an audacious adaptation of The Odyssey. It's one of the most anticipated films of the year and a true big screen event. So get your tickets now to see it on 35mm, only at the C Film Center, Denver's only nonprofit independent art house theater. This is the kind of epic, larger-than-life cinematic experience that deserves to be seen with an audience. Whether you're a longtime Nolan fan or simply love movies, this is a rare opportunity to experience a modern master's latest work in a truly special format. Tickets are on sale now at the box office at the C Film Center or visit denverfilm.org. Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. So today we're talking about the fight for the governor's race, but from the GOP side, some lingering questions we have as the media about how we cover elections and what is old is new again in Rhino. Today, I am joined by Westward Editor Emeritus, Patty Calhoun. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Bree. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
How's being semi-retired going? Is it happening?
It was pretty much of a blast. My first day, I wrote a story for The Nation on the election in Colorado.
Oh, my God. Okay. Well, then let's talk about that. What did you share for The Nation about what we're doing over here in Colorado?
I think the biggest surprise was not necessarily Malat Keros winning, but just how much people didn't like incumbents. They were maybe not like them, just didn't like the idea of them continuing on. That certainly was what we saw with Bennett, losing by so much. I think they considered him an incumbent, even though he hasn't been the governor before. And there was the added thing that he went down by, almost 14 points, but that people also realized he could stay in the Senate and even with Phil Weiser in the governor's office. So that made it easier. But certainly the vote against Aguette, she didn't realize how anti-incumbent the vote was going to be, or she would have gone on CityCast, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, though, we don't need to relitigate it. It has been done a ton, but the Malat ground game was nuts. Again, we covered that at length. I think she jumped into the race so early. She really got people fired up. It was something to be seen. It did make me happy that it happened here in Colorado because that means people are looking at us. But speaking of that, I think we have to talk about, you want to talk about the GOP side of this, right?
Right, the GOP. And
at least from the governors.
And also the coverage of Hickenloopers and the Senate seat.
Okay, yeah. So what did you think? So where we left it last week, it was Victor Marx and Barbara Kirkmeyer. They were recounting votes, but Victor Marx is now... He is the chosen,
which is going to make this a wild election as people really start paying attention to his backstory. And when you talk about how people covered the campaign up to the primary, they still considered him much more a character rather than a candidate. So we were looking into his claim to having killed someone, and then he wouldn't talk about other people he might have killed, his exorcism history, how many people he rescued. It was much more dealing with him as a curiosity, and now we have to deal with him as a real candidate.
Why do you think Colorado GOP voters went that direction? Because I feel like Kirkmeyer's purpose was to say, I am not the character. I am actually a person who's been in this world for a long time. And essentially, I feel that's how she positioned herself was, I'm not the character from the GOP.
Right.
I'm going up against this man.
Experienced public service who's been serving on the JBC. And I wouldn't say that was an anti-incumbent vote at all. It was just the Colorado Republican Party continuing its crazy view on electing the furthest right people they could, or the people with the least amount of chance of winning.
Yeah.
You think about the last race, Heidi Ganal. We just haven't had people who've got a shot. And if Victor Marx has a shot in Colorado, we don't know this state at all, which is possible.
He made it this far and he passed Barb Kirkmeyer. What do you think that says for, you had this really interesting piece last week, too, in Westward about hearkening back to around 2010 with another candidate named Dan Mays. Can you talk about that from the GOP perspective and sort of where they were 16 years ago?
So Scott McGinnis, people might remember him. He was a congressman, respected congressman. He was the leading Republican candidate in 2010. And then he got mired in this plagiarism possible scandal, which now looks very
I
mild.
was just going to say, it seems very, nobody, that would be a blip these days.
No one was killed. No one was rescued from Iran. I mean, it was a very mild conversation, but he wound up not winning. And instead, we have Dan Mays. I wouldn't say he was wacky. He was just nothing. He was such a lackluster candidate. And he inspired Tom Tancredo to jump in as a third-party candidate. And Tom Tancredo wound up getting, 33% of the vote. Hickenlooper was running his first time that year, and he did pass Tancredo. But the Republican Party almost lost its major party status because Dan Mays only got 11% of the vote. You drop below 10, and you are not a major party anymore.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. Unfortunately, I was not very politically active at that time.
Right. And so since then, we have not had a lot of luck in the gubernatorial candidacies. So I'm sure Victor Marx will get more than 10%. But does he deserve it? Good question.
And also, is that a strategy? I mean, who's running the GOP at this point then, I guess?
As far as we can tell, really no one is running the GOP. So we've gone through a variety of chair people. A new one was elected just 2 months ago, but not in time to strategize who was going to be the leading candidate, even if they want to strategize who was going to be the leading candidate.
And it looks like Craig Steiner is the chair of the
Craig Steiner.
Party. Does that sound correctly? Okay.
Yeah, and I saw him talk on election night. He came out of Douglas County, and he seems fairly reasonable, but he has to rebuild a party where you have both Bottoms and Barb Kirkmeyer, who ran against Victor Marx, have said they wouldn't support his candidacy. So you have the two other leading candidates in Colorado saying they won't support the gubernatorial candidate. You have Greg Lopez, who had filled out a congressional term. He's running as a third-party candidate. So, and he was a Republican. So it's going to be really unlikely for the Republicans to take this one. And they've got a lot to rebuild. They have no money. They have no real candidate, as far as I can tell. And it's going to affect all the down ballot candidates, some of the state house candidates.
Did you say something about off mic when we were emailing? Did you say something about Tina Peters and as Victor Marx's running mate?
Well, they both have to pick running mates soon, Phil Weiser and Victor Marx. I suggested Victor Marx pick Tina Peters. Frankly, I would love to see Barb Kirkmeyer on the ballot, but she said she's not going to support him, so she can't be the one. I saw her at Lynn Bartle's memorial service on Saturday.
Longtime political reporter for folks who don't know.
Right, and a good example of
for Secretary of State Wayne Williams.
She would have loved covering this race, this entire primary, but he's got to pick somebody. And who is he going to pick? So the two candidates who ran with him, they're not eligible. So I just thought, Tina Peters, why not? She's out. She's free.
Name recognition. If you need a little bit more of that.
She could make sure the election isn't rigged.
And I want to apologize to one of my favorite 80s balladeers, Richard Marx. I keep thinking of you instead of Victor Marx. There couldn't be anybody more different. But anyway, real quick before we move on from politics, there was a great thread from Chase Woodruff at Colorado Newsline kind of willingly dissecting us and the media's role in elections and how that played out with the Hickenlooper challenge from Senator Julie Gonzalez and how maybe she was underestimated by the press ourselves when she really came in hard in that race. Over 400,000. That is 400,000 votes. That's a big push against Hickenlooper, who was coming at her with a lot of money. And I think Chase was sort of lamenting, was part of this the fact that the media didn't cover the race in the way that we could. What did you think about that, Patty? You've been covering these races for a long time.
I thought it was interesting from a variety of angles. One is it was the whole anti-incumbent wave that we didn't recognize. Anyone in the we felt it, but we didn't recognize it as much. I mean, really with Malat Quiros, you also saw she was a personality in her own right, and that was part of what you were covering, that three-way race. She was in earlier, too, than Julie Gonzalez. Yeah, Julie Gonzalez, there should have been more debates, as it turns out. But also, we were looking much more metro than statewide, and that was where the big difference was, I think. But certainly, we should have heard more. I don't think she would have won even if there had been more media coverage, but I think it might have been even a little closer. We also have to look at how the media has changed. And I thought about that with Lynn, where you used to have 3-4 different people from the same publication covering elections, covering the state house. You had 2 City Hall reporters from each daily paper. You have so few people now covering the political races that they're picking and choosing what they can do. And that's a shame because you need more coverage.
No, and that's a fair point, too, is the landscape of media has changed to the point where we just don't have enough people to cover it adequately. But I agree with you. I think the incumbent part of this conversation was very easily glossed over as like, well, generally speaking, and I hear this in every election.
Incumbents always win, right?
Yes.
And it's not true anymore.
It's not true. And also, they may have to put up a better fight than they thought, as we saw with the Gonzalez-Hickenlooper race, too. Again, for her not having the money to match him and having to get more ground game out across the state versus just the Denver metro, she did not do too shabby at all. And I know that's not the last we've heard from her.
It was really tough. Did you do an interview with her?
We did when she first announced. So I feel like it was late 2025 when she first announced we talked to her. But I don't know if we've gotten a response, but we've never been able to get Hickenlooper on the show either at all. So it wasn't just us, I would say.
No. And I think in the next election, it'll be fascinating to see if these incumbents or the people who allegedly are the leading candidates realize they need to get out there more and speak more.
Yeah.
Or will they be scared to for fear of saying something wrong?
We'll be watching this because, again, in November, we still will be talking about some of these candidates, though arguably the ballot initiatives are going to be the big thing at that point. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're talking about the Zeppelins back in Zeppelin Station. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Summer in Colorado means trails, sunshine, and sometimes the unexpected. John Froelich felt off during a hike west of Denver. He drove straight to Denver Health, where doctors found he was having a serious heart attack. Denver's healthcare team got him the treatment he needed fast. And 6 months later, John crossed the finish line at the Colfax Half Marathon. John's story is a reminder of what can happen when Coloradans go out and live their summer. With locations across Denver, a clinic in Winter Park, and virtual care available 7 days a week, Denver Health is never far from wherever summer takes you. At Denver Health, they're with you for life's journey. Learn more at denverhealth.org/survivorstory. That's denverhealth.org/survivorstory. This episode is brought to you by the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District. Celebrate Colfax at the 4th Annual Colfax Indie Bash on Wednesday, July 22nd from 6 to 9 p.m. at Pete's Satire Lounge, featuring us. That's right, we'll be doing a live CityCast Denver recording with some great special guests. You don't want to miss it. This free community celebration features local food and drinks, art, music, the characters of Colfax Awards, and more. Plus, there's good reason to arrive early besides, hanging out with me and the rest of the CityCast Denver crew, because the first 50 people in the door will receive a limited edition canvas Colfax tote bag. Stop by the We Back the Facts booth to snag your Fax Pass to unlock discounts and prizes along the East Colfax corridor. Then get in the independent spirit and check out your fave Colfax businesses during Indie Week, running July 26th through August 1st. Use your tote bag at participating Indie Week retailers on Colfax to receive 10% off. Don't miss it. Plan your week at colfaxav.com/indie-week. That's colfaxav.com/indie-week. We'll see you there. Okay, we are back. Business Den reports that Kyle Zeppelin of Zeppelin, the Zeppelin Development Family Dynasty, took Zeppelin Station back last week with business partners Neil Adam and Jason Kaplan. This is the 4-story building at 3501 Wazee Street in the area that the Zeppelins arguably helped turn into what is known today as Rhino. And that building was in receivership. Wells Fargo says the company defaulted on the building loan by failing to meet specified income to debt ratio. Kyle countersued, they settled, and now he and his partners are moving back into having control of this building again. Before we get into this a little bit, Patty, can you give us a little too long didn't read on who the Zeppelins are and what their role has been in this particular part of the city?
So Mickey Zeppelin, Kyle Zeppelin's father, longtime developer, but also kind of an arty, edgy developer. One of the first guys to bring lofts downtown into the Lodo area. One of the first developers in the Golden Triangle to recognize there was potential there. And also Rhino. And you have to remember, Rhino started, it wasn't even technically the Rhino Art District until 2005. So 21 years ago was when Jill Hadley Hooper and Tracy Weil, artists who had studios down there, realized maybe they could make more art of an art district out of it and filed to become the Rhino Art District. And the developers were not slow to come in because, as you know, artists generally are screwed. As soon as they make a place hip, in come the developers. And certainly all along Brighton Boulevard, we have seen that. And we can talk about that.
I know. I was like, just Google me and Rhino, and you will get many stories on those very artists who were eventually pushed out of the Rhino Art District. Yes.
Exactly. In 2005, it was artist studios, it was DIY spaces, it was underground clubs in old warehouses.
Absolutely.
Then the warehouses were purchased, and then new buildings started to come in. The monolithic apartment buildings that are just so hideous. But Mickey Zeppelin and his son Kyle were among the really early developers. I mean, Susan Wick, who, if she's not married, Mickey's longtime partner, has a great studio down there and has had it for decades. They bought the Source, the old factory that they became the Source, which was one of the first really big developments down in Rhino. And then Zeppelin Station came a little trickier because it's on the other side of Rhino, of the river.
Yeah, and the train tracks. And yes.
Yeah, and they turned it into a food court, a variety of things, and it was supposed to be the hip next place, and it just didn't make it like the Source did.
Yeah, and again, so this opened, Zeppelin Station opened back in 2018. This is a 100,000 square foot, 4-story office building with retail space on the bottom. Again, many buildings of its type during this time hit the skids with the pandemic. And I think it just really struggled. This was a very weird time for a lot of places, but it was like Denver was bouncing back after the recession, right? In 2009, 2010, like you were just talking about, I was in that area of Brighton Boulevard weekly for so many, many years as this transition was happening. But the pandemic really hit some of these buildings, especially office buildings. This was also a food hall. I feel like the food hall concept was everywhere all of a sudden. And that has kind of died out in Zeppelin Station. And so Kyle says his current plans for the food hall area are to get a coffee shop going, put a fitness center in, retain some of the existing food halls or food stalls, but don't make it, a million different. Don't make it like the food court idea that it kind of was at one point. And to focus on, he says he's focusing on it being a lunch spot. Patty, what do you think about this new era for Zeppelin Station?
So food courts were really tough when the pandemic, because if you didn't have people in the office buildings and
Who's
you
gonna
were
eat there?
in kind of a backwater area like this was, you didn't have people driving there to go get a sandwich during the pandemic. You didn't have people in the offices to go buy their sandwich. So the food court was definitely a no-go. You might remember about a year ago, there was the plan to put in the dinosaur place.
I was going to ask about that. Clever Girl was supposed to go in last spring. You guys reported on this. We never saw it.
That just disappeared. That was one of those big, grandiose ideas that didn't make it. And so Kyle going back in, he spent a lot of time renovating an old hotel in Uray. That's been one of his projects. But him going back in and to take over one of his babies makes a lot of sense. But he has to do it differently because, for example, Central Station, a Central Market.
Yes, Denver Central Market, again, across the tracks from this area. But it is also a food hall that opened
over 10 years ago. Just over 10 years ago, because they're changing some tenants now. But that has always been kind of a destination place as well as better located for people in the neighborhood. And so that's changing tenants now. Some of the tenants the former tenants were upset they weren't able to re-sign, but that's going through some changes. But it will remain a food court-ish of the new hip, good bar, good place to go. Zeppelin's is going to have to change.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because they are in the same neighborhood. But when you look at a map, so Taxi is the one that's across the water that the Zeppelin's owned. But Zeppelin Station is on the same side. However, you do have to go over train tracks. And it's just still a little bit more industrial around it as to where Denver Central Market is at 27th and Larimer. That is like the heart of that area and has been for the last decade. And like you said, I think there's a lot more natural foot traffic to it, even from the neighborhood. And what's interesting is, so Ken Wolf, the developer, owns the market itself, but doesn't own the building. Like you said, there's been some big changes there. Some big vendors have moved out. The Curio Bar moved out. You all just reported last week, Bar 77 is moving in. And Denver Central Market is doing something different than Zeppelin Station wants to do. It's not going necessarily for the lunch crowd, though I think it'll be just fine then. They're actually going for the nighttime crowd, which is absolutely already down there. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Which is so easy. You can stop in, you can have a drink, then you can walk to another club. You can walk to another restaurant. That's not as easy from the Zeppelin Station.
You know, I was thinking about when you talked about the pandemic hitting and office buildings being where office workers would go to these places. I just can't help but think about the 80s and early 90s, Patty, downtown, where the food courts were like in basements of you had to really go find them if you didn't work in an office. Because I remember going to like the Santa Fe Cookie Lady. I was a huge fan as a kid of the Tabor Center's food court, but they were kind of tucked away. And that kind of thing, there's just no way these days that would work with how many people don't work in offices. I was just thinking about what a relic of a time it was that the food court was versus the food hall that we have now.
Right, exactly. And now you've got the Junction, which is at 2000 South Colorado Boulevard. They're still trying to make it. Westminster and Arvada are getting some new food halls. So it's still a concept people think will work, but you have to get the right mix.
And I will say, as a parent, Edgewater Market and Stanley Marketplace are awesome for this reason because kids can be there and it's not like your kid is in a bar. You know what I mean? So I do love them. I look forward to it. Zeppelin Station's a little different location-wise. I'd be curious to see how they make it work. But again, they're looking at the daytime. So this episode is brought to you by the Colorado Lottery. Did you know Colorado is turning 150 this year? The Colorado Lottery is celebrating this big birthday with 3 new prize-packed scratch games. Check out the new $5 150th birthday scratch game loaded with cash prizes, the $3 winning country scratch game with a top prize of $30,000, and the $10 Colorado Gold Rush scratch game with a top prize of $250,000. That's $250,000 that could be yours. Did you know that every game from the Colorado Lottery directly gives back to Colorado's great outdoors? Since 1985, the Colorado Lottery has given more than $3.7 billion back to parks, trails, open spaces, and recreation projects across the state. Profits from the sales of these games are distributed to voter-selected groups like Great Outdoors Colorado, the Conservation Trust Fund, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and more. Celebrate the Centennial State's 150th birthday this year with the Colorado Lottery's special celebration scratch games. Must be 18 to play. Visit coloradolottery.com to learn more. That's coloradolottery.com. This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Listen, my swamp cooler is old and temperamental. I mean, sometimes I can really crank it up and our house stays pretty cool, but other times I'm like eating a popsicle for breakfast just to stay chilled. You know what I mean? But at night, it's all about my Cozy Earth bed sheets. Made from viscose from bamboo, these sheets are breathable, soft, and built for summer. I'm not a person who can sleep without any covers on. I like a little bit, but even when it's supremely hot out there, my Cozy Earth sheets make sure I stay comfy and chill. And they're so effective at being awesome bed sheets that our 5-year-old still tries to sneak into our bed at night. Oh, and my kiddo is a real sensory boy too, so he cannot get enough of Cozy Earth's sheets and their buttery soft texture. I know good sheets are an investment, so take comfort in knowing that Cozy Earth stands behind everything they make, with a 10-year warranty and 100 nights of hassle-free returns on bedding. Head to CozyEarth.com and use our code CozyDenver for an exclusive 20% off. That's code CozyDenver for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on CityCast Denver. before we say goodbye, Patty, Two Moons Music Hall closed in Rhino last month. This was one of the venues for UMS. UMS has come Underground Music Showcase, which is moving to Rhino, which is a big sort of experiment in itself. I think folks are waiting to see how this very Broadway festival lands in another part of town that is also full of music venues. But Two Moons was one of these music venues. The UMS folks have said, we're still trying to create a venue there in the space that exists. What do you think about, what are your thoughts on UMS heading into this coming up here in less than 10 days?
It is going to be a real challenge because it's not just going into Rhino, where we had our own music showcase too. And it was a little trickier than when we used to be in the Golden Triangle, for example. Bigger walks to get to venues involved. So Two Moons was great because it was very centrally located. So you can see that they're going to try to make it still work there. I mean, nothing's been taken out of it. So it should be able to be a temporary venue if they can have someone run it and they have the right licensing. I think it'll be pretty key. But it's the same weekend as Lucifer's
First rodeo, which is happening, as we've talked about many times.
And which is pretty much sold out. So you've got the biggest music weekend, I think, in Denver history, really with the two, and your options to see all these local bands. Which will you do? Can you do both? Who's going to win? How's it going to work in Rhino, which isn't as set up for live music as Broadway is?
It's true. Foot traffic wise, I think it will be a little tougher. And we've talked about that on the show before. However, I guess my guess is who's got the best air conditioned venues is probably going to do the best, because we're looking at, I mean, it's always hot for UMS and for summer festivals, but it's supposed to be really hot.
That's going to be a problem. Now, Lucifer is doing all indoors. I don't think they're doing any big outdoor. So as long as the air conditioning holds up in those spots, they're going to be okay. I haven't really checked UMS to see how many of them are bigger outdoor shows, but
because that's usually where their headliners are, though, honestly.
I've never seen that people won't go even though it's going to be hot. You just have to have the misters, you got to have the water, you've got to have the crowd control, and that's going to be a challenge. But good for Rhino understanding they should bring some big events there. Let's hope it works.
Yeah, because this also obviously happened after the transition with the Business Improvement District separating from the Art District.
And the Business Improvement District just committed to putting $400,000 into the Art District, so that's good. Art District has some corporate sponsors, that's good. And they realize they have to keep art going. And they've got good projects coming up in the art park. So fingers crossed there will be art there. But it's so changed from 20 years ago, it's almost crazy. Beyond belief.
It's wild. Also, I'm thinking about with Two Moons, like you said, the infrastructure's already there. They already have the sound system, probably the PA and everything set up. I think about back with UMS, I don't know, 10 years ago, there were some restaurant storefronts that were empty, and they turned those into venues, and they had nothing but an empty room. So I think Two Moons is going to do just fine for UMS. And
they'll need it. So let's just hope it works out.
Yeah, and I think it's really just going to come down to splitting the audience, or if the audience is going to cross over, who's going to see what. There's a lot of local acts that are playing both. But I think it comes down to like who you really want to see is where you're going to station yourself for the whole weekend. So, you know what? Speaking of that, we'd love to hear what your plans are for UMS and or Lucifer's First Rodeo. Which one are you going to? Are you going to both? Do you have a game plan? Let us know. 720-500-5418. Give us a call on the Lucifer UMS hotline. Again, you can text us or leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you think, what your plans are. Patty, thank you so much for joining me today, as always.
My pleasure.
It was lovely. Thanks. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Mickey Zeppelin about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. And hey, thanks to our new neighbor, Tom S., who just joined our membership program. You can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.